Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Parallel, and welcome to another episode of Parallel Synchronized Awesomeness. Today we're talking about John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum. John Wick Chapter 3 is directed by Chad Stahelski and once again stars Keanu Reeves as the Baba Yaga. In this film, John is on the run after a bounty is placed on his head for killing Santino D'Antonio, who at the time of his death had ascended to the role of the High Table member, and was also taking refuge in the Continental. Remember, no blood on Continental grounds, so that's a double whammy for John. These actions put John into the crosshairs of the High Table, and he is excommunicado, aka cut off from all resources. I'm not going to talk much about Keanu Reeves' performance in this movie. It's on par with what you've come to expect if you've seen the first two films. I will, however, give him props for putting himself through more grueling training to be so badass for these movies. Instead, I want to focus on some of the newcomers in this film. Mark Dacascos. Mark Dacascos in this film is so fun to watch. He plays Zero, one of the assassins assigned to take out John. He's one part ninja and one part nerd. The characters in this film are mostly stoic in nature, but not Zero though. He's more lively and animated and constantly geeks out over John and the idea of taking him on. It brings a little bit of levity and humor to this world, but it's not so over the top that it feels out of place. Aja K. Dillon plays the Adjudicator. While she's one of those villains that clearly doesn't get her hands dirty, she's definitely not as spineless and wormy like Santino was from the last film, which makes her a better overall character to watch. Her resolve and devotion to the High Table is unquestionable. To her, nothing is above the table, and that is the creed that guides her every action. Next, we have Halle Berry as Sophia. She's an ex-assassin who now manages a branch of the Continental in Casablanca. The action scene with her and her dogs is arguably one of the best in the film. She moves with the same predatory grace as John, but her killing prowess is amplified by the use of the dogs who will attack and kill on her command. It was cool to know that Halle Berry had actually trained with the dogs in order to have them listen to her on set instead of needing to look for cues from a trainer. This means the crew could film the scenes without having to worry about the trainers accidentally getting in the shot. So now let's talk about some old blood that are more of a focal point in this one. Winston, played by Mcshane, has gotten himself into some hot water with the table by giving John an hour grace period in the last film. They are none too happy with him, and the Adjudicator informs him that they are going to be taking the Continental out of his hands. Winston, though, he's not too ready to give up his throne, and he convinces John to help him fight the High Table alongside Sharon, played by Lance Reddick. So we finally figured out what we seemingly knew all along. Sharon is a total badass and is more than capable of helping John hold the Continental against the High Table. The action in this movie is once again smooth, stylish, and visceral. In fact, they really ramped up the visceral level to almost a horror level of gore in some cases. There is a knife fight scene near the beginning that is especially standout in this regard. The film is shot in that familiar Neo-Noir style from the previous films. You'll recognize the neon glows that were heavily present in the last film and somewhat in the first. The pacing, as with all of these films, is perfect, and this one is no exception. Once it starts, it rarely slows down, and if you're a fan of these films, you'll be smiling from start to finish. You also get a bit more depth and insight into the lore of this world. More rituals and customs are on display here, and yet it still feels like they're only scratching the surface of how deep this rabbit hole goes. If you've never seen a movie in this franchise, I wouldn't recommend you start here. These movies are basically run back to back like one giant continuing story, much like the way they did with Back to the Future. Though you could still enjoy the ride, you'd be missing some really important context. I would, however, recommend you get on the train and watch them all, especially if you're an action movie fan. These are quality action movies, and you can tell a lot of tender love, care, and thought has been put into fleshing out these characters and this world. I, for one, can't wait for the next entry. I give John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum 4 out of 5 parallels. Alright everyone, I've been Mr. Parallel. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you like what you see, click like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.